From day one, we are told who we should be, how to live, and what's acceptable. Before we even have a chance to discover ourselves, our society has already drawn those lines for us. But what happens when those lines are keeping us from knowing and embracing who we truly are? Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox, a podcast about unpacking and unlearning everything that's kept you from living as your true self. Through honest conversations about your internal emotional landscape, sexuality, coming out later in life, relationships, and the journey to self-acceptance, we break free from the boxes we never chose. I have Heidi Savell here. Heidi is a polyamory coach and also a therapist, and she has been leading groups. I'll let her tell you a little bit about it, but she's been leading groups for folks who are new to polyamory for a number of years now, and she's amazing. And she is also one of my very best friends. So this is a very special episode where we get to have an expert on this topic, which I know so many of you have questions about, polyamory, and also I get to see one of my besties who lives across the country. So Heidi, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a therapist for over 15 years, and I've been working in the polyamory world for about the last 10. And it's just like you said, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years that I've really shifted into this focus of polyamory within my coaching practice. And that focus is specifically for folks who are very new to polyamory or non-monogamy, who are curious about it, who are checking it out, or who have started and are like, wow, this is really hard. I could use some support. I could use some help. And so I've got individual and couples packages. I also have a group program that's meant to be taken individually. It's a 12-week guided program called Steady Your Polywobbles that really gives people kind of the foundational skills to be able to really engage in polyamory from a very healthy standpoint. Yeah. And that piece has a group coaching aspect. So there's community, there's a curriculum, and you get to work with me as well.
Awesome. So tell people where they can find those programs.
Yeah. So steadypolyamory.com is my website. And then I'm also on Instagram at steadypolyamory.
Okay. Awesome. Check out Heidi's programs and her Instagram. She's amazing.
Thanks,
and I'm so
Samantha.
excited to have you on. Yes. I'm so excited to have you on because what I have found in speaking to so many folks that are coming out later in life that are in heterosexual marriages, because this is basically who I work with. Typically, it's people who identify as female, they're married to a man, and they realize a little bit later in life, holy shit, I'm gay. Or not even I'm gay, maybe I'm bisexual, but I am finding myself extremely attracted to women, and I'm married to a man. I'm in a monogamous relationship, and I need a way to explore what these feelings are that I'm having. And so many of the women that I work with lean into ethical non-monogamy, or they open the relationship. Some of them, try poly. And I guess, the definition and the differences between those, I think, could be interesting. Also, why don't you, if you can, just give a little bit of a summary of what is the difference between those?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is open relationships, or ethical non-monogamy, or consensual non-monogamy, lots of different names for it. That's kind of this umbrella term that captures a lot of different things. And that could be as simple as we play together with other people, or we have simply sexual experiences with other people, but we don't necessarily form full-on relationships with other people. So generally, when people are specifying open relationship versus polyamory, that is the main distinction. They're talking about this is primarily a sexual thing or a more casual or short-term thing. Whereas when we're talking about polyamory, we're talking about full-blown relationships, romantic entanglements, that are happening concurrent to other relationships. So at the same time.
Good. That's super helpful. So I think what happens with these women is that they want to explore these feelings that they're having and they want to open the marriage. And they sometimes have a partner who is willing to do that. And sometimes they have a partner who doesn't really like the idea, but doesn't really feel they have much of a choice. And then I think that they initially, not knowing probably the difference between these terms, sort of open the relationship, but then find themselves actually starting to have more of an intimate relationship with this person. And that gives them the information that they need that says, well, I think I might be more gay than bisexual or whatnot. And they tend to kind of then lean out of their marriage and more into this relationship. And it's sort of a pathway that I've heard many, many women go down, which is, I'm going to open up. We're going to check out other people. You can do this too. I'm okay with that. Many times the male partner is not necessarily interested in that. They had no desire to do that in the first place. And so this tends to get messy for folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, for this very specific population, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are not people who are like, relatively happy in their relationship. And they're like, oh, it would be really nice to actually open up and have more experiences. How can we both do that? So in this situation, it's the one person. What things should people think about as they're deciding to do that to create like the least harm possible?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. It's like the least harm possible, right? Because like you're saying, often the outcome may be that ultimately they leave the relationship. And so looking at this through the framework of obviously like they have some part of themselves that like they really need to express, and that feels so authentic to them that they've been stifling. And it sounds like in these circumstances, they can't really fathom yet, or they're not ready to leave their marriage, or maybe they just don't even want to leave the marriage, possibly. But in that case, what I would say, the number one thing is sit down and have a really honest conversation with your partner. And by that, I mean, honestly talk about what you're hoping to get out of it, and honestly really explore all of the possible outcomes. And that's hard. That's hard to do. And when I work with people, I think that the biggest barrier to that is I'm afraid if we really honestly explore the outcomes, my partner will say no. And I totally get that fear. And again, if we're talking about the least harm possible, you don't want to set up your partner to be blindsided, right? Or like to feel betrayed, like you said this one thing and now it's something else. So to the extent possible, sitting down and saying, all right, like within the universe of possibilities, here are all the things that could happen, right? I could fall in love with this person. I could decide and discover that I'm actually gay. I'm not bisexual. And that in order to live authentically, I need to be with a woman. It's possible to discover, oh, I'm bisexual. And in order to fully authentically be me, I need to be in a relationship with a woman also. Mm-hmm. Or possibly, okay, I scratched that itch. I know that about myself. I am happy to stay in this marriage and transition back to monogamy. That seems unlikely to me, but certainly it's possible. But I think talking about all those possibilities, and this is true whether or not, regardless of why you're opening up, I think so many people come into this thinking, oh, I'm not going to fall in love. This is just about sex for me. And they may truly believe that and have every intention of that, but like, that's not how we work as humans, right? If we see someone and we get to know them and we're developing a sense of intimacy with them and we're having sex with them, like people fall in love. That happens, right? And so I think acknowledging the reality of those possibilities, as painful as that may be, is just so important to go in with, everyone's eyes open.
I love that. That's like that really clear, transparent, explicit, really open mind to all of these things could possibly happen, and really share all the things that you're feeling, because when you go in without that, it really is like there's like little booby traps all over the place.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You brought up, you need to communicate explicitly with your partner about all of this and really talk through all the possibilities. And then you said, and there is the possibility that your partner could say no, which makes it so scary, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say for someone whose partner does say no? Their partner does say, or they don't necessarily say no, but they say, I'm not interested in doing that. Like, I don't want to open up. I'm not interested in exploring other people. And I'm really not very comfortable with you doing that either.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to talk to just the woman who's like wanting to do this, what I would say is, you have a couple of options here with varying degrees of harm and ethics and transparency. You can, if it feels important enough to you to explore this, you can leave the relationship, you can pause the relationship, you can do a trial separation. Or you could, decide to do nothing. I don't recommend that, because I think these feelings only grow as we stifle them.
Mm-hmm.
The other option, which I also don't recommend, is you can do it unethically, right? I mean, if we're acknowledging all the possibilities that are out there, that people cheat. And so you could pursue this without your partner's knowledge. Again, I'm not suggesting that this is something I recommend, but like anytime I'm working with a client, it's like, what is within the realm of possibilities here?
Mm-hmm.
These are the options, right? I mean, I think what I would recommend of those is saying, like, if this feels like so authentic to me, like, hey, if this, I can understand why you might not want to do this. If that's the case, what I would like to ask for, like, a trial separation. Let's just pause things. Let's put it on ice and let me explore this in a way where you're not like sitting at home holding the bag, right? But we can kind of reassess in a few months. I think that would be the most ethical and the least harmful alternative.
I'm thinking about some of these women who are married and they have like 3 kids or 4 kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if that pause could even look like it's a separation, but it's sort of more of like a sexual intimacy separation in the couple, but they also continue to live under the same roof together and continue, which is difficult. But I mean, I think when we think of like a trial separation, so somebody can go out and do this and explore, and they are in a family setting, it becomes very complicated. Like, well, I'm going to leave and go live somewhere else while I have kids. That feels really hard. I feel very stuck. I can't really do that. So I'm wondering if that's another possibility, is to sort of pause the romantic, sensual, sexual side of the relationship, just kind of put that on ice while doing this exploration.
Yeah, I do think that's a possibility. I agree with you that I think that's a lot harder. And specifically, this is going to sound like really specific, but I think there is something specifically about continuing to share a bed.
Yes.
During that time.
I get that. Yeah.
That is the like hardest part of that. Like, if at all possible, even just having a separate bedroom can, I think, make a big difference, in part because it is hard, if you are the person who is not pursuing this, if you are the spouse who's at home, and if you share a bed with someone, it's hard to like be like, what time is it? Are they home yet? Why are they still out? And to get yourself worked up. And so to have even just that little bit of separation, of like a little bit of freedom for each people to live their lives without having to like be so hooked into what's happening with the other one.
Mm-hmm.
I also think just like sharing like a physical space where sex and intimacy has happened during that time can be really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if possible, even, I get like there's reasons and logistics to like, stay in the home to not disrupt the children. And even just that bit of separation, I think can be really powerful.
Okay. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
A separate bedroom.
Yeah. And, I mean, I just think it's almost like, this is going to sound like a weird tangent, but it's almost like a prenup, right? Where you're like, hey, we hope that this works out in the best for both of us. And we're setting up something for in case it doesn't. And like knowing what the possibilities are and talking about how we'd like that to go. I think that's also a part of the conversation, right? Of like, not just acknowledging what all the possibilities are, but also saying, how would we like to handle it in all these situations before we've done it? While we're still in this place right now, like if any of those outcomes that I kind of listed off before happen, how do we want to be our best selves in that situation?
Yeah, I love all of this. One of the things I love about you is just that you are so highly evolved and you can have these really nuanced, conversations where, you can hold many, many things at once to be true, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a high level of communication. And I just feel like this is so hard for people to communicate on this level. So to go from a long-term marriage, let's say you've got 3 kids, 4 kids, you've been together for 20 years, and all of a sudden someone's having this discovery, and to actually bring these topics up and be able to talk about them in a way where, there's honesty and transparency and kindness.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrifying, right? Like, I don't want to minimize that. It's terrifying to like think about this life you've built for yourself over decades, or however long it's been, and to think about blowing that all up or risking that for either partner, the one asking for this and the one on the other end. It's like the emotional stakes feel like they couldn't be higher. And so, of course, this feels like such a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
And, I think what I would say in response to that is a couple things. One is, this is not one conversation. This is a series of conversations.
Yes, I love that. That's so important. That's really important to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a series of conversations that happens over some span of time. The very first conversation might just be, hey, I think I might be attracted to women. Just talking about that. Why do you think that? What's coming up for you? Like, and I always recommend starting those conversations, prompting your partner for kindness. And what I mean by that is saying, like, there's something I want to share with you. I'm scared to share it. And, I want to ask if you can be gentle with me as I share this with you, just as a way to like clue your partner in how like you'd like them to show up for you. I think that can be a super helpful way to start.
Are you thinking, maybe I should contact Samantha so I can come on the podcast and have a conversation with her about what is going on with me? If so, go to unboxyoursexuality.com and fill out the form so that you can apply to be a guest on this podcast, and we can talk about whatever it is that is keeping you stuck in the box and unable to live your authenticity. Join me.
I don't think the first conversation is, let's open the marriage, right? I think the first conversation is, I'm noticing I have some attractions that I want to talk to you about. Just even sharing that you're having attraction to women, I think is a starting place. Just that, not jumping into solutions, sharing your feelings, getting your partner's response. And also, I think prompting that conversation, prompting your partner for kindness by saying something like, hey, I have something to bring up with you. I've been scared to bring it up, and I want to ask that as much as possible, that if you can be gentle with me, or if we can just kind of talk about this together and explore. And that's it for the first conversation. I think sometimes we as humans want to jump too fast into problem solving. And I think sometimes we just have to start by lingering in those feelings.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've also heard from so many women is that they have had that conversation. And it might not have really been a conversation, but it was more of a share. Hey, I'm having these feelings. And their partner listens and is like, okay, thanks for telling me. And then nothing happens. And I think that these women are waiting for their partner to bring it back around. And like your partner might not bring it back around. This is
Right.
something you brought up. And just because you said it and it was so scary to say it, and it was very brave of you to say it and start the conversation, from my experience, this is something that needs to be brought up multiple times.
Yeah.
Until there's some almost like breakthrough of the denial that is happening for your partner, because I think it is a common reaction that is just like, the words are coming, but none of this is actually processing into my emotional system because I can't really hear this.
Right. Yeah.
So I like what you're saying, which is, this is many, many conversations.
Yeah. And I think that can be, to your point, I think that can be bringing the conversation up because it's so scary to do it. And then to hear, oh, you have to continue to do it. But I think you're so right that is crucial because like you said, if it's a one-time thing, it's like, oh, okay, we talked about it. The person hearing it might not know there's any more to it. Like, oh, thanks for letting me know. And
Right.
So it's important to keep bringing it up. It's like, hey, this isn't going away. This is a part of me and it needs to be, I need to have space for it. I need to express it. And I do think that as those conversations keep happening, they may become less scary to bring up. And eventually getting to a place of even before suggesting an open relationship, just even saying like, what can we do about this? Let's come together as a team.
Yeah. And that brings me to my next question for you, which is, I hear when women do bring this up multiple times that male partners typically will say, let's bring in another woman.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I hear you're having these desires. This is something I think could help us.
Right.
And that creates, I don't know, a bit of a reaction, I would say, for many women. And I have also talked to women that have said, okay, like that is, if that's what I can do, I'm going to take that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I've heard other women that are like, oh my gosh, why does he think what I'm sharing about my sexuality is about him and that he would be involved in that?
Right. Well, and I think, my answer to that would be like, then that's important to talk about, gently, to say like, thank you, I appreciate that consideration. And like, this feels like a personal journey for me. This is something that I'm not really going to be able to like sort through my own experience if, I've got my husband in the room with me. This is something that's like personal and mine that I want to explore. And, I would say in bringing it up, like the first time you even bring up the topic of an open relationship, I wouldn't bring it up as, can we do this? I would bring it up as, what would this look like? What could this look like? Have you ever considered that? I wonder what it would be like, So it's because I think if we bring it up as a question too soon, it's normal, I think, and natural to like have kind of a response of like, that's scary, shutting it down, upon the first time thinking about it, but letting it be kind of this like curiosity and an exploration and slowly exploring it over time.
And is that how the folks that you work with, because I mean, it's not really all that different, right? If you're working with, let's say, a couple where one person of the couple is interested in opening the relationship and the other person hadn't ever really thought of that, and it's not something that they're necessarily interested in. I mean, the reason maybe doesn't really matter as much as you've got two people where one is interested in exploring what would this look like, and the other person is kind of like, oh my God, I never thought of that before. And like, I don't know that I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, it's actually very similar. I think I advise people start with your own feelings, your own discoveries, what you're noticing about yourself, and just bring those up as a topic for discussion, exploration to like talk about with your partner. And then again, like it's a series of conversations. And then, slowly and eventually bring up like, hey, what would this look like if we were to do it? I also encourage folks to explore the resources. There's podcasts, there's literature. You can work with a coach, someone like me, to kind of work through like, I've worked with like hundreds of folks at this point. So looking at like, hey, here are the things that usually go wrong. Here are the things I've seen go well. Here's a more high risk way to do this. Here's a lower risk way to do this. And even before making the decision, I would say exploring those resources together as a couple to look at and kind of think through the pros and cons and what that could look like, and having those conversations. I mean, I think the people I see who it goes the most disastrously for are the ones who are just like, sure, let's do it. And they jump in without really thinking through the options, the potential outcomes, how they want to handle that.
Okay. So it's really important to, if you're stepping onto this journey and this exploration of yourself, it's important to really not just jump in and do it because you're dying to like have the experience and you just want it to happen.
Yeah.
But to really think through all the possible outcomes that could be really painful and really messy, and to talk about those and also come up with ways to prevent those from happening. Or
I mean, I think it's less about preventing them from happening and more just talking about like anytime you open a relationship, there's risk. There are potential outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's any relationship. Anytime you're in a relationship, yes. I mean, yes. that's what I say a lot is just being in a relationship is a risk. If you're really, really afraid to get close to someone because you might get hurt, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Right? Like relationships hurt. They
right.
also can fill you with joy, but they also hurt. Right? So I guess this just raises the potential for hurt because you're expanding the relationships that you're in.
Well, I mean, yes. And like, I would say another thing is like, another way to think about it is like, it is sharing the discomfort instead of asking one person to hold the discomfort all on their own. Right. Like in this case. So we're talking about someone who is holding on to the discomfort of not fully feeling like they're authentically expressing themselves, this part of them that they haven't explored. And that is such an uncomfortable thing to hold on to. And you are asking your partner to share in that discomfort with you and share in the uncertainty with you instead of holding it all on your own, saying, let's do this together. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable for you. And yes, you're going to sit in the uncertainty too. Neither of us know what's going to happen. And I'm not, I am asking you to share this with me as my partner, as we explore like what, if anything, is possible for the continuation of our relationship.
And again, I mean, because I also work with couples like you, and I feel like being able to have that conversation is a couple that is, I'm going to use the word evolved. Like they are evolved in that they are emotionally vulnerable with one another. They know how to have conversations about hard things. I just think like this language, which for you or for me might be very everyday and very common, for someone who's been in a relationship for 15 years, that's like extremely traditional, very traditional roles and all of that. I think that some of this languaging could be just the languaging in and of itself is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say that like, if that is the case, if someone's listening to this and they're like, I don't even know where to start, I would honestly say bring in a third party
Yes.
who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Bring in a third party who can say, hey, I've worked with people before. Here's, here are the conversations to have. I can help you facilitate them.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the possible things to think about as you start this,
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I just think if this conversation feels inaccessible and your goal is to reduce harm, then it is worth it to bring in a professional, bring in a third party who can really facilitate these conversations, who can guide you and your partner through them
Mm-hmm.
and help you do this with care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if not only do you want to honor this long connection you've had, but you also, if you have kids, want to think about how do we make this as kind and not messy as possible, even if the end, which often it may be, the end result is the dissolution of that version of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I guess in your area, which is not specific to queer people, but there are lots of queer people, but it's not as specifically as the people I work with, which are typically women who are realizing a bit later in life after they've been living a heteronormative life that they are actually queer.
Mm-hmm.
For a new couple who is coming into this, percentage wise, how many actually go on to really manage being poly or being ethically non-monogamous and developing these skills and really enriching their lives, by opening up in this way? Is it like 50-50? I mean, like all relationships kind of are 50-50,
Right.
whether they is it,
do you mean just generally, not specifically people who are looking to explore queer identity?
because I just think, I think it's interesting because, in the case I'm talking about, it's like people want to explore their queer identity and that's part of it. But I don't know that matters so much because it feels kind of similar to a couple that has been practicing monogamy, where somebody would like to open up the relationship because they're curious about doing that. It's still being curious about a part of themselves that they want to access that they are not currently accessing in a monogamous relationship. So it kind of feels very parallel, even though there is this one piece that I work with, but it still feels kind of the same. I think they could all get pulled into the same population.
Yeah. I mean, I think I see where you're going with that. And I think the distinction, and as I'm saying that, I'm like, it's not actually a distinction because it's true in both cases. There is a percentage of people who know in their heart of hearts already that what they really want is to leave the relationship. I think that's true with women who are exploring their queerness. And I think that's true with some people who are opening the relationship.
Yeah,
they are
so
looking,
true.
I think in both cases, and I say this with all the compassion in the world, they are looking for a soft exit. They are looking for a way that doesn't feel as cataclysmic as just a hard ending.
Yeah.
And for those people, I think, the likelihood of sustaining an open relationship is very, very, very low.
Yeah.
And for people who are in a place of I really, even if I discover that I am, not attracted to men, I am invested in staying in this relationship, either because I want to be a, live-in co-parent, or because, whatever reasons, that someone has, if they are from a place of really, truly, I'm invested in this, I would say, I mean, what I can tell you is this: the number of people who try open relationships, it's about 20% of the population.
Okay.
And the number of people who have sustained open relationships is about 5%.
Okay.
So I don't have the advanced math skills to figure out what percentage of the people who try it actually stick with it. But a lot of people try it, and, I don't necessarily know that that indicates that their relationship broke up. It may be that they decided to close it eventually. It may be that they did it for a while and then eventually, found someone and decided not to do it anymore, or
Right.
their life circumstances changed or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have like a selection bias in some ways, because often when people find me, they're either already doing it or really like invested to the point that they're willing to like do this deep work.
Right.
So I see a lot of instances of it working out.
Right.
But again, I think that's because of the space I work in. Yeah.
And so you don't see a lot of people who already know that the relationship might be ending, and this is sort of like one last ditched attempt, or this is, let's just do this one thing and see if it makes it better.
Yeah. I mean, I see those people too. I do.
You see those people too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely do.
It's like things aren't going well. This is not really working for us. Let's pull in something from the outside and see if doing that will make this better.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did in my first marriage.
Okay.
That was how I first opened to polyamory.
Oh, wow. That could be a really good story for another podcast episode.
Totally. But yeah, I mean, that's why I'm like, I say this with all love in the world. I did it myself. Like,
so was that, it was like, oh my God, this is so not working. Like, what if I could pull in another relationship and then that would help this to work because I have something else?
Yeah. And like, we actually transparently talked about it. I went to my husband at the time and was like, I'm really unhappy. My needs aren't getting met. This doesn't feel good to me. And we talked it through and decided that the solution would be to get some of our needs met elsewhere, which was lovely for a while. But at the end of the day, like, I didn't want any of my relationships to be ones in which I wasn't getting my needs met. And so bringing on other relationships in which I didn't heal the one in which I wasn't getting those needs met. If anything, it eventually just shined a stronger light on the fact that those needs were not getting met.
Yeah, I love that. That's such an important statement.
Yeah.
To hear. So if you're in a relationship and you've tried everything to make it work and it is not fulfilling your needs, that opening up the relationship is not going to suddenly create your needs being filled in your primary relationship.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, I think for some people, if they're ready to make the transition out of a romantic partner, but like, I want to remain co-parents, I want to remain co-owners of this house, I want to remain business partners, whatever the circumstances may be, that may be a situation in which they both decide, let's pursue our romantic interests elsewhere, but stay in partnership for other reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that is different than, I'm getting my needs met elsewhere. And so somehow this relationship that isn't meeting my needs magically feels more fulfilling.
Yes.
That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, you can be co-parents, you can be friends,
mm-hmm.
You can be life partners, like partners in the day-to-day, and then have other partners that fulfill other needs.
Yeah. And I've worked with folks who have made that transition. I know people in my community who have made that transition where they're still co-parents. They may even decide to cohabitate still, but they're no longer romantic partners, and they, have other romantic partnerships. Yeah.
So that's yet another iteration of where you could end up, especially as somebody coming out later, is being really, really close with your partner, with your spouse, but not staying in a romantic relationship, but continuing to do the life things together that you need to, that you kind of committed to, like the family that you have or whatnot.
Right. And I would, reiterate, circling back to the beginning of our conversation, if that is something that you hope for as an outcome, it is so important to do this process in the way that minimizes harm, right? And that means having these really honest conversations at the beginning, maybe with the help of a facilitator.
Yeah, because it sounds like without that, you're sort of minimizing the successful outcomes that you could have.
Right. And also if you are, someone could end up feeling tricked. I thought you wanted to open the relationship to explore and now you're leaving me. You know,
Yes.
you said this wouldn't happen, or you said that all you wanted was just a little bit to explore, right? If that wasn't on the table from the beginning, someone could feel betrayed, fairly or
Yes.
unfairly. You know, that could end up being what happens.
Yes.
And so, you know, to preserve the goodwill and the friendship, you know, I think it is better in the long run to have those more painful conversations in the beginning.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, this is really great advice for anybody who is in this space. You're with a partner, you are starting to explore your sexuality, you are able to have conversations with your partner about this. Definitely check out Heidi on Instagram and check out her website and the courses she offers, because this can get very messy and be very frustrating, and really create a lot of hurt feelings when it's not done with this kindness and transparency and certain types of communication that are really essential to make it, you know, go wherever you might want it to be able to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I also don't want to scare people. Like there's real potential here. I mean, I'm bisexual and I have a polyamorous relationship, and I feel like I can't imagine myself in a monogamous relationship because I want to be able to explore and express all the sides of my sexuality, and I would never be able to do that in a monogamous relationship. And so, you know, it's a lovely way for me to engage with and be able to express my sexuality. So I certainly don't want to scare anyone into thinking this can't work.
Yeah. No, I mean, you make it work beautifully. And I think that could also be a really interesting conversation at some point so that people can hear about that if you're willing to talk about it. I mean, that would be really a very interesting conversation for people to, you know, to take in and hear how this can actually really work well. So
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back on sometime.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And we'll definitely have you on again. It seems like we have a lot of other topics to cover.
Yes, I love it. We've unearthed so many different areas we could take this in.
Yes. Thanks so much, Heidi.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Okay. Speak soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending this time with me on Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more folks find these conversations. If you're ready to unbox from something that's keeping you stuck, I would love to support you. You can find the application to the show at unboxyoursexuality.com. Let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. Give me a follow and join the conversation. Remember, we only have this one time through. Why not unbox yourself and let your true self shine in all its beautiful glory?